so we're going to add a scoring system into our game to reward our players when they actually destroy the bricks. So unlike previously when we made our lives, where we created our text object to display in the game first, we're going to go and add the code first to our script. So we're going to go into our scripts folder and open our game manager script. It should be open here. And what we're going to do, first of all, we need to create a variable that'll keep track of how much score we currently have. So we're going to say this will be our public int current score, like that. The next thing we want to do is add a function to be able to add score into our game. So we want to be able to, whenever our player picks up or hits against a brick of any kind, what we'll do is make sure that it calls the score and adds it to, or sorry, calls the function that we're about to create, and that will add it on to our current score. So we're going to go down here and we're going to go below our respawn ball, and we're going to create a function called public void add score, and we'll put our little brackets in. And what we want to do is we want to say, okay, this function that we're creating called add score, that's going to take in a value. So the value it's going to take in will be a new int that we're going to call score to add. So what we're saying is, so say if our ball hits against this object here, that will have a score of 100 applied to it. And what that means then is it'll call the function and it'll pass 100 in. And then here we'll have, okay, we'll have add score, and basically we're saying within this bracket is 100. So then we can say, okay, we can take our current score and say plus equals score to add, like that. And that's pretty much all we want this function to do at the moment. We haven't set up our text on the screen, so we don't need to worry about updating our text just yet. We'll return to doing that in just a little bit. But what we're going to do then is we're going to go back into our folder, or into our project here. We have that set up on our script now, and we go to look at our game manager. Once it's finished compiling, there's now a slot there for our current score, and that's perfectly fine. But we need to be able to assign a score value to all our individual bricks within the game. And the way we'll do that is by creating a new game object, create a new C# script, sorry, not a game object. In our scripts, we're creating a new script that we're going to call the brick controller. And we'll open this up in MonoDevelop here. And on this little script, we're going to have the value of whatever our bricks currently are. So that'll be public int brick value, like that. And the next thing we want to do is basically just be able to say, okay, what we want to do is when our brick is destroyed, that it calls from the game manager the add score function and adds the score to it. So to do that, we obviously need to know what the game manager is. So let's create a public game manager, and we'll just call it the GM. And then in our start function, we'll say the GM is equal to find object of type game manager, because we know we wanted to find the game manager as soon as it gets going. And then we need to decide what happens when it gets destroyed. So to control our bricks getting destroyed, at the moment all that happens is when the ball hits against the brick, it uses the on collision exit here and it says, okay, just destroy the other object. We don't care what happens to it. So we're going to change it so that actually what happens when the ball hits against a brick, instead of just destroying it, it's actually going to go to the brick controller and it's going to call a new function on it that we're creating now, that we're going to call public void destroy brick, like that. And then on this function, this will call, it'll go to the game manager, so it'll go to the GM, and it'll run the add score function, and the score it'll pass in will be whatever brick value we give it. So we'll say brick value, like that. Make sure we put our semicolon at the end. And then the next thing we want to do, as soon as it's sent the value out to the game manager, the next thing it'll do is just destroy itself. So it'll just go destroy game object. Nice and simple. So now that we've set that up, we need to go to our ball controller script. And here, where we have it set to destroy, we're just going to comment that out by putting 2 little slashes in front of it, because we're no longer using that code, but you don't really want to delete old code in case it becomes useful again at some point in the future. And instead of that, we're going to say, okay, on the other game object, we want to get the component that's attached to that, which is the brick controller component. And on that brick controller component, we want to say dot destroy brick, which is the function we just created on it. So basically what this does is it'll go to the other game object the ball just hit against, and then it'll get the component, which is the brick controller, and it'll destroy that brick with that function. So we can save that now, and that's all the little basic bits of code we need to add in. So we can go back into the game and we can apply that script to our bricks. So once it finishes compiling again, we will let that happen, and we'll go to our first original brick. We'll add the brick controller script to it, and we'll set the brick value to be 100. I just realized the game manager has been set as public and there's no real need for that, so we'll set that as private. There's no reason why you can't set all your variables as public. All it really does though is end up with you ending up with a fully clogged up inspector over on the right, and you can end up adjusting values that you don't want to adjust. So it's always kind of sensible to try and keep things logically. If you don't need to be making a change to a variable, just set it as private so you don't need to think about it. Okay, so we've added that to our first brick, so let's hit apply, so that'll be applied to all the prefabs. So now all of our bricks along this line here have different I have the brick controller script attached to them, but we can make changes to them. So say for example this orange one, we can set the value of him to be 500. We could set this pink one here to be worth 1,000 points. As long as we don't hit the apply button, these point values only apply to the specific bricks that we've created here. So what we can do now is hit play, and actually I should have the game manager highlighted. So if we have game manager highlighted, we can see that our current score at the moment is 0, but now if we press play, every time we hit an object, our score gets added on. So you can see as we bounce off our different objects within the world, we get it all adding up as we go. Okay, so we've got the functionality of our score manager in place. So now let's make it be displayed to the player.
Konnichiwa.